Hey there duelists, welcome back to Team APS Plus. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys 5 beginner-friendly Yu-Gi-Oh decks. So this is something that I actually used to do a lot on YouTube but haven't done very much recently. However, a friend of mine suggested that I start doing it, and I think this could provide some value for new players because I get asked this question all the time. And the truth is, Yu-Gi-Oh has loads and loads of decks. It's really easy to get overwhelmed. And honestly, there are still even dozens of decks that I could have suggested in this video that are just beginner friendly. I'm gonna miss some of your favorites, so if you know of anything that you would suggest, of course, leave it down in the comments. My goal here was to just pick decks that had a pretty simple, straightforward game plan, but are still pretty powerful decks in their own right. So it's something that somebody could pick up, play, and get decent results with. Also, all of these decks are pretty budget. I'll try to mention where you can get most of the cards for them. So yeah, all right. First deck is Machina. Now this is a deck that has been around in Yu-Gi-Oh for quite a long time, but it recently got a structure deck that kind of helped bring it up to speed. So basically you're going to be using monsters like Machina Gear Frame and Machina Metal Cruncher. These are your normal summons in the deck. They search your deck for other Machina cards. So you've got things like Machina Resavager or Machina Possess Storage. These are dark machine monsters that kind of function as utility cards. They can protect your Machina monsters in battle or recover cards from the graveyard or even just summon themselves when they're searched. But you also have a wide array of very powerful Machina boss monsters. There's also Machina Citadel, which is kind of the newer boss monster of the deck. It's got 3,000 attack, and it's really cool because it actually sits in your graveyard, and when one of your Earth Machine monsters gets destroyed, you can summon it from the grave. When it's on the field, it can actually use a quick effect that lets it destroy one of your machines and then destroy all monsters your opponent controls that have less attack than that machine. So with 3,000 attack itself, it could actually just destroy itself and then nuke an opponent's entire board. And they even have a super powerful boss monster in Machina Rune Force. It's got 4,600 attack and you can summon it just by banishing Machina monsters with levels that equal 12. It's really big, it can negate effects in the battle phase, so when you're swinging with 4,600, you'll actually be able to stop, say, a card like Mirror Force that might interrupt you or a Book of Moon. Not only that, this deck is extremely consistent. So you've got a spell card called Machina Redeployment that actually lets you search your deck for Machina monsters or Machina cards. You can also use a card called Urgent Schedule that summons a level 4 or lower machine monster and a level 5 or higher machine monster from your deck. They've even got a trap card called Machina Overdrive that summons a Machina monster from your deck in exchange for destroying one in your field, which isn't such a bad thing because that can trigger Machina Citadel. So all in all, I would say that this is a deck that's extremely consistent, extremely resilient. There's a lot of ways to sort of grind your opponent down in a battle of attrition, and the boss monsters are really pretty powerful and scary. If you want to pick up Machina pretty easily, they actually got a structure deck just a couple of years ago, like I mentioned, and even though it's probably not on store shelves anymore, you can still find it online for reasonable prices, like on TCG Player, links in the description. So yeah, 3 of those and you're pretty much good to go. Deck number 2 is Sword Soul. Now this is a fun one because it actually used to be a top meta contender in Yu-Gi-Oh! While it's since fallen from grace, I still think that the strategy is extremely accessible and extremely effective. So this is actually a synchro summon based strategy. Normally synchro summoning means you have to get a non-tuner and a tuner monster in the field, add up their levels, and that makes the level of the synchro monster that you want to summon. The thing with Sword Soul though is that it kind of expedites that process a little bit for you because the Sword Soul monsters actually summon tokens to the field. So, for instance, Sword Soul of Moye can just reveal another Sword Soul card in your hand, and it'll summon a token to your field. It's a level 4 monster. That's really all the tokens for synchro summoning. And so then, when you synchro summon with Moye, you even get to draw a card for your troubles. And they've got other cards like Sword Soul of Tai or Long Yuan that do similar things. And yeah, it makes synchro summoning really simple and really easy. They've also got a really powerful array of synchro monsters. For instance, you've got Chi Zhao, which can search your deck or negate opponent's cards. They've got ways to burn your opponent for damage, and they even have a monster that gains attack for all of the banished cards in the field, and whenever cards leave the field, it can banish more of your opponent's cards. All in all though, I think that this deck is extremely simple, and the best part about it is that you can actually pick up the entire deck core from Magnificent Mavens, which was a product that just released at the end of last year. And once you get more familiar with Sword Soul, you can actually combine it with other worm-based archetypes because they're all worm monsters. So a really good one is Tenyi. That's something that people usually combine it with. I won't get into it too much in this video, but if you want to look up deck lists, it's really easy to pick that up and combine it in there as well. All right, so deck number 3 is going to be Dark World. These guys recently got a structure deck just at the end of last year, and it really brought an otherwise kind of old strategy back into the modern day. This deck is really, really easy to play. All of the monsters get different effects when they're discarded from your hand to the graveyard by a card effect. This means that you can use a simple card like, say, Card Destruction and your monsters get discarded, and they might summon themselves back to the field, or pop a card on the field, or let you draw another card. One of their really strong existing boss monsters is called Grapha, and he can actually summon himself from the graveyard by returning a Dark World monster on your field back to your hand. And you want it to be back in your hand to get discarded and get another effect. And of course, when Grapha himself is discarded, it can pop a card in the field. This deck got some new cards like Dark World Archive that can power up your Dark World monsters, and they even got a counter trap card that actually lets you discard from your hand while negating your opponent's summons or spells and traps. And the coolest part about the Dark World deck is that the structure deck gave them a fusion monster, which is something that they did not have before. It's an upgraded form of Grapha that actually lets you do something a little bit cool. So normally the Dark World monsters get effects when they're discarded, but if your opponent makes you discard them, then they get additional, much stronger effects. Now, typically this is going to be kind of hard to do, right? Because your opponent's not going to just let you discard cards. They're going to try to avoid that. They don't want you to get these extra effects. The cool thing though is that the new Grapha monster can actually take your opponent's card effects and change them into making you discard a card. And since it's your opponent's effect, you'll get those extra effects from your Dark World monsters, and it's just a really fun time. Like with Machina, this structure deck is easy to just pick up 3 copies of. And the even better news is, since it only just came out, you can probably walk into Walmart or Target or your card shop and just find it today. So deck number 4 is going to be Trap Tricks. It's actually another deck that just got a structure deck. Very convenient because I'm making so many of these. The Trap Tricks monsters, as their names imply, are all about trap cards, or more specifically, hole trap cards. So cards like Trap Hole or Bottomless Trap Hole that you might be familiar with, along with a myriad of other new trap hole cards that have come out over the years. You've got things like Grave Digger's Trap Hole that actually can negate effects that happen in your opponent's graveyard, hand, or even when their monsters are banished and burn them for the trouble. You've got cards like Floodgate Trap Hole that can actually flip a monster face down when it's summoned. And Trap Tricks even have their own combination of archetype-specific trap hole cards as well. All the Trap Tricks monsters aren't affected by trap cards, and they usually let you search your deck for these trap cards and set them to your field, or even set them from your graveyard back to your field. So you'll be able to recycle these really strong disruptive cards that just get in your opponent's way. And they have 2 different types of extra deck monsters they can make use of. You've got a wide range of Xyz and Link monsters. Link monsters like Trap Trick Sarah let you quickly get more Trap Tricks monsters from your deck or more trap hole cards from your deck, and the stronger Link monsters can actually get rid of your opponent's cards or negate them as well. I think my favorite part about this deck is that it's like really easy to kind of summon a single monster, get a disruption to use on your opponent's turn, and then just kind of end it there if you're new. But the more you learn about this deck, the more you find different combinations to recycle those trap cards and kind of pin your opponent down into a trap, because they're literally called Trap Tricks. So I decided to have a little bit of fun and throw in a bit of a curveball for this final deck. It's an older one that not that many people might remember, but it's Fur Hire. So this is a really cool archetype of monsters that are all just different animals of different types, and their effects are extremely easy to pick up. So basically, once per turn, you can summon another monster for hire from your hand. And that's a simple enough effect. It lets you swarm the field because all of them can do this, but that's not all. Whenever you summon another monster for hire while one of them is on the field, they get other additional effects. It might search another card to your hand, it might destroy an opponent's face-up card or face-down card, or give all of your for hire monsters 500 extra attack at the end of the turn, or even summon them from the graveyard, get them back to your hand, all kinds of things. They've also got a number of boss monsters, the 2 big ones being Raphael, who can actually negate monster effects and excavate cards from the top of your deck that you can add to your hand, or Wiz, which can negate spell and trap effects and give you life points in the process. And I think that just my favorite part about this is that it's so easy to simply look at the card, read what it does, and just play, right? You just summon one, it summons another from your hand, it triggers an effect, and you summon another from your hand, and it triggers an effect. It's really easy to follow, really easy to pick up, and if you want to expand the deck further into more of like a link-based strategy, it's really easy to do that, but you can also just play it pure and have fun that way. And those are the 5 beginner-friendly Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks that I recommend. Like I said, there's going to be plenty that I missed, so feel free to leave them in the comments, and hopefully this provided some value for you guys. I really think that these sorts of videos are helpful for new players because there's always new Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. All right, anyways, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a like and let me know how these decks go for you. Okay, I'm gonna see you in the next one. Fast turn.